to Iran or any country around the world, diplomacy is always his first option, and Iran would be very wise to make a deal with President Trump. Well, there's many reasons and arguments that one could make for a strike against Iran. The president had a very successful operation as commander-in-chief with Operation Midnight Hammer, as you know, as you just said, totally obliterated Iran's nuclear facilities. The president has always been very clear, though, with respect to Iran or any country around the world, diplomacy is always his first option, and Iran would be very wise to make a deal with President Trump and with this administration. He's talking to many people, of course, his national security team, first and foremost, and you know who the members of that team are. And this is something, obviously, the president takes seriously. He's always thinking about what's in the best interest of the United States of America, of our military, of the American people, and that's how he makes decisions with respect to military action of any kind. Look, I don't have any specifics on the president's recent conversations with Israel. As you know, Prime Minister Netanyahu was just here at the White House last week or the week before. But again, with respect to Iran, there was some progress made yesterday. There are still a lot of details to discuss, and we'll continue to see how this plays out. You know, the United States government, of course, is always in close communication and correspondence with the state of Israel, and that starts right at the top with the president and Prime Minister Netanyahu themselves. I think you heard from the administration and the State Department yesterday that there was a little bit of progress made, but we're still very far apart on some issues. I believe the Iranians are expected to come back to us with some more detail in the next couple of weeks, and so the president will continue to watch how this plays out.
So I'll be involved in those talks indirectly, and they'll be very important. And we'll see what can happen. It's been typically Iran's a very tough negotiator. They're good negotiators, or bad negotiators. I would say they're bad negotiators because we could have had a deal instead of sending the B-2s in to knock out their nuclear potential, and we had to send the B-2s. I hope they're going to be more reasonable. They want to make a deal. No, I think they want to make a deal. I don't think they want the consequences of not making a deal. They want to make a deal.
The Iranians and the Americans are now again talking about how to have talks. And this is sort of what we saw last year when Steve Witkoff, the U.S. Special Envoy, and Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas al-Araghchi first started negotiations over Iran's program. Now, those negotiations broke down after Israel launched a 12-day war against Iran back in June that saw the Americans also bomb Iranian nuclear sites. This time, something is different in these talks, though, held in the Omani capital. The United States brought its top military commander for the Middle East. U.S. Navy Admiral Brad Cooper sat in on the talks in his dress uniform. He was the physical representation of the USS Abraham Lincoln. That U.S. aircraft carrier is in the Arabian Sea off the coast of Iran and has the firepower necessary to carry out U.S. President Donald Trump's threats to potentially attack Iran if it doesn't reach a deal, or if it kills peaceful protesters, or puts detainees to mass executions, as they have warned they may do after those nationwide protests shook Iran. So all this together, while we did hear from the Iranians saying that these talks were positive, and while we did hear from the Omanis saying that these talks were moving in the right direction, there's a lot still to be done to even get close to a deal, and it just remains unclear how much time remains on the clock.
The Iranian regime is murdering its own people. It destabilizes the Middle East. It spreads terror to other continents, including Latin America. The attempt by the most extreme regime in the world to obtain the most dangerous weapon in the world, a nuclear weapon, is a clear danger to peace in the region and in the world. The huge amounts of long-range ballistic missiles that the Iranian regime seeks to produce endangers Israel, but not just her.
And the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Paraguay.
The regime already used missiles against other countries in the Middle East. European states are also threatened by the range of these missiles. Lebanon cannot realize its sovereignty because of the presence of the Hezbollah terror army, funded by Iran, on its own soil. This is also the case in Yemen and Iraq. On their soil too, there are terror armies and armed militias funded and armed by the Iranian regime.
יש עוד אתגרים לפנינו. צפויים לנו עוד רגעי מבחן, אבל אנחנו ערוכים וערוכים לכל התפתחות. אנחנו עוקבים אחר המתרחש, ואנחנו ערוכים לכל תרחיש. מי שיתקוף אותנו יישא בתוצאות בלתי נסבלות מבחינתו.
Last night, on the President's orders, U.S. Central Command, under the command of General Eric Kurilla, executed Operation Midnight Hammer, a deliberate and precise strike against 3 Iranian nuclear facilities. This was a complex and high-risk mission carried out with exceptional skill and discipline by our joint force. I want to thank every service member, planner, operator that made this mission possible.
The objective of Operation Midnight Hammer was to destroy the regime's nuclear enrichment capacity and stop the grave nuclear threat posed to the United States, Israel, and the rest of the free world. The mission, which will go down in the history books, was an overwhelming success.
به نظر من این خیلی روشنه. اگر آمریکا به ما حمله بکنه، طبیعی است که ما امکان حمله به خاک اصلی آمریکا رو نداریم. ناچارن به پایگاه‌های آمریکا در منطقه حمله خواهیم کرد یا پاسخ خواهیم داد. و متاسفانه پایگاه‌های آمریکا در سراسر منطقه ولی بی‌اعتمادی بسیار زیادی وجود داره. چگونه میشه اعتماد ایجاد کرد؟ به نظر من کار آسانی نیست. البته این بی‌اعتمادی از طرف آمریکا ایجاد شده. در دور قبلی مذاکرات این ما نبودیم که وسط مذاکرات اقدام به تهاجم نظامی کردیم. در حقیقت اولین بمبی که به سمت ما شلیک شد، به سمت میز مذاکره شلیک شد.
Images also show how Iran has buried tunnel entrances at a nuclear site bombed by the U.S. during Israel's 12-day war with Iran last year in 2025.
رئیس جمهور آمریکا که ارتش ما قوی ترین ارتش دنیاست. قوی ترین ارتش دنیا ممکنه اونچنان گاهی سیلی بخوره که از جا نتوانه بلنش. میگن ما ناو فرستادیم طرف ایران. خیلی خوب. ناو البته یک دستگاه خطرناکی است، اما خطرناکتر از ناو سلاحی است که میتوانه این ناو رو به قعر دریا.
Iran announced a maritime military exercise in waterways that are crucial international trade routes through which 20% of the world's oil passes.
با چه زبانی باید بگیم که ما به دنبال سلاح هسته‌ای نیستیم و نخواهیم هم بود. هر چطور میخوان راستی آزمایی کنن. ما اگر واقعا اینا دلشون بخواد ایران سلاح هسته‌ای نداشته باشه، ما آماده ایم هر گونه راستی آزمایی رو خواستن.
A new window of opportunity has opened, under which we had the second round of the negotiations with the United States earlier today here in Geneva. We are hopeful that negotiation will lead to a sustainable and negotiated solution which can serve the interest of relevant parties and the broader region. At the same time, as demonstrated during the aggression of 13 June 2025, Iran remains fully prepared to defend itself against any threat or act of aggression. The consequences of any attack against Iran will not be confined to its borders. Mr. President, the United States and some European states persist in the imposition of unlawful sanctions, military threats, the engagement in force posturing, and the issuance of explicit references to the possible use of force by the United States, including significant military deployments in the region. Such actions constitute a continuing violation of the prohibition of the threat or use of force as enshrined in Article 2, Paragraph 4 of the Charter of the United Nations and must be brought to an immediate and unconditional end.
The role that the agency can play
Lasting agreements can only be achieved through mutual balanced commitments and respect for the legitimate rights of nations. The Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons explicitly recognizes the inalienable right of all state parties to develop, research, produce and use nuclear energy, including enrichment, for peaceful purposes. This right is inherent, non-negotiable and legally binding. It is not conditional upon political considerations, nor can it be suspended or reinterpreted arbitrarily. Any attempt to portray this right as revocable fundamentally contradicts the letter and the spirit of the treaty.